Robert Kiyosaki has a way of making you feel like you're sitting across the table from him, sipping coffee, while he leans in and says, "Kid, they've been lying to you about money your whole life." That's basically the opening vibe of Retire Young, Retire Rich. In this book, he's not just talking about making money, he's talking about making enough money so that working becomes optional, decades before most people even think about retirement. It's the kind of idea that either gets you excited or makes you roll your eyes. But Kiyosaki, as always, has stories, metaphors, and some tough love truths to make you at least entertain the possibility. This is the third book in the Rich Dad series, so by now you already know the setup. Robert had two father figures growing up: his highly educated but financially struggling poor dad, and his friend's entrepreneurial, street-smart, rich dad. One believed in the traditional path: school, stable job, work hard, retire at 65. The other believed in making money work for you so you could live free long before the clock runs out. Here Kiyosaki takes the gloves off. He's saying, if you want to retire young and rich, you're going to have to play a different game, and you're going to have to start now. The reality check: why most people never get there. Kiyosaki starts by gently, okay, not so gently, pointing out that most people will never retire rich. And it's not because they're incapable, it's because they've been trained to think small and safe. Schools, he says, teach you how to be a good employee, not how to be financially free. You're told to work hard, save money, buy a house, and live within your means. The problem? That advice made sense in 1950. But in the modern economy, inflation, taxes, and the speed of change mean you can save all you want and still find yourself scraping by in retirement. Kiyosaki doesn't say this to depress you. He says it to jolt you awake. If you want a different result, you have to follow different rules. Leverage, the secret ingredient. One of the key ideas in Retire Young, Retire Rich is leverage, but not the scary, I'm up to my eyeballs in credit card debt kind. He means leverage in the broad sense, using tools, systems, people, and money to multiply your efforts. Poor dad worked hard, traded time for money, and when he stopped working, the money stopped flowing. Rich dad worked hard to build assets, things that made money for him whether he was there or not. Rental properties, businesses, investments. Once those were in place, his income didn't depend on clocking in. Kiyosaki explains that leverage can take many forms. Financial leverage, using other people's money responsibly to acquire income-producing assets. Time leverage, building systems so that your business runs without you micromanaging every detail. Knowledge leverage, learning skills that open bigger, better opportunities. The point is, the road to retiring young isn't paved with working harder. It's paved with working smarter and multiplying your results. The cash flow mindset. Kiyosaki's favorite word might be cash flow. If you've read his earlier work, you know he's obsessed with it. In Retire Young, Retire Rich, he drives home the idea that the wealthy focus on creating streams of passive income, not just saving money from active work. Poor dad's strategy was to earn a salary, budget tightly, and hope for the best. Rich dad's strategy was to invest in assets, real estate, businesses, stocks, that produced money every month regardless of whether he lifted a finger. Kiyosaki makes the point that if your passive income exceeds your expenses, you're financially free. Whether that number is $3,000 a month or $30,000 depends on your lifestyle, but the principle is the same. Once you hit that threshold, work becomes optional. The power of starting small and early. Here's where Kiyosaki gets very human. He admits he didn't start with a pile of money or some magical insider advantage. He and his wife Kim started small, so small it was almost laughable. They lived cheaply, invested carefully, and reinvested their profits instead of upgrading their lifestyle. At first, their assets produced tiny amounts of income, a few $100s a month. But they kept adding to the portfolio, and over time the snowball effect kicked in. What started as just enough to cover groceries turned into just enough to cover rent, and eventually became more than enough to cover everything. This is one of the most important lessons of the book. You don't need to hit a home run on your first try. You just need to start and keep building. The education they don't teach you in school. Kiyosaki makes it clear that the kind of financial education you need to retire young isn't found in a classroom. You learn it by doing. Buying your first rental property, starting a small side business, making investment mistakes, and adjusting. He emphasizes learning the language of money, understanding balance sheets, income statements, return on investment, and tax strategies. It's not about becoming an accountant. It's about being fluent enough to spot opportunities and avoid traps. Rich Dad's advice to him was simple. The more you know, the less you fear. Financial illiteracy keeps people frozen in place because they're afraid to make mistakes. But once you understand the mechanics, those scary investments start to look like puzzles you can solve. mindset, the biggest lever of all. If there's one thing Kiyosaki insists on, it's that your mindset will determine your wealth far more than your circumstances. Poor dad believed that security came from a steady job and a pension. Rich dad believed that security came from control over your own income. Fear, Kiyosaki says, is the number one thing that keeps people from getting rich. Fear of losing money. Fear of looking foolish. Fear of change. The antidote isn't recklessness, it's education, practice, and surrounding yourself with people who think bigger. Final thoughts: young, rich, and free isn't an accident. By the end of Retire Young, Retire Rich, Kiyosaki's message is crystal clear. You won't stumble into wealth and freedom by accident. You have to choose it, design it, and work toward it deliberately. That doesn't mean working yourself into the ground. It means building assets, using leverage, learning constantly, and keeping your expenses low enough that your passive income can overtake them. It's about making money your employee, not your boss. The whole point, he says, is freedom. Retiring young isn't just about sipping cocktails on a beach. It's about having the choice to spend your time however you want, without money calling the shots. And maybe, just maybe, it's about proving to yourself, and to all the people who told you to play it safe, that you could play a different game and win.